Super awesome. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to DPS International's University Fair. I have a very awesome panel with me, representing Bennett, Palaksha, Kriya, Ashoka, and OP Jindal. Without taking much time, let me quickly introduce myself so that we get started. My name is Abhishek Gupta, and I'm the founder and the chair for High School Moms and International Alliance of Counselors and Educators. I've had the opportunity to talk to a couple of you in the recent past, and I look forward to talk to you more in future. Ankur, your opening remarks on the new phase age of Indian higher education system, please. And ladies and gentlemen, Ankur Vora is representing OP Jindal. Over to you, Ankur.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you so much. My sincere gratitude to DPS International for Ankur Vora, the head of outreach and international admissions at OP Jindal Global University. We are a leading social science research-based liberal arts institution located in Delhi NCR, India. We are a fully residential university located in Sonipat, which is about 90 minutes from the center of Delhi. With regards to the topic at hand, I think definitely this is a new age of higher education institutions in India. I have been privileged enough to work with two of them, my current institution and before that with Ashoka University when I was heading their international outreach. I think India is undergoing a transformation, as is also reflected in the new education policy that came out recently, where the government of India is acknowledging that the new age institutions in India should be focusing on interdisciplinarity, critical thinking, communication skills, numeracy skills. Those are the things that we at Ashoka and other new age universities have been talking about. And I have my colleagues here from different other universities too that will be talking about that. But they will agree that those are the same things that we have been talking about for last many years now. For me personally, last 8 years, I have been talking about, this love for knowledge, love for learning, love for your country, doing something bigger than just a job, being a wholesome human being. And focusing on your life as a whole rather than just looking for an average job placement at the end of your university degree. Also, another thing that the Indian New Age, I call them New Age Indian institutions, and there are about 10-15 of them. They are focusing on not only the job part of it, definitely that's a part of our teaching, but also what happens inside those 3 years or 4 years that you spend at those universities, getting you the best of faculty, getting you the best of collaborations, student mobility, getting you the curriculum, the flexibility available, which is available at top tier institutions in the world, and which was part of our, and new education policy talks about that was part of our Indian education system also, but somewhere we got lost. So we are in a new age of, definitely a new age of Indian education, and I'm proud that we are being able to fulfill the demands and aspiration of our students as well. I believe there is a scope for 100 more institutions like Jindal and Ashoka and Kriya and all of us, and let's hope that we get to that. So that's my initial remarks. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Ankur. Gurnam. We all have been talking about challenges thrown by COVID and pandemic and the way the technology has gone up, and it's very, very clear that the technology curve has shifted big time up, possibly taking us 10 years 10 years leap in last 3 to 4 months, right? And Bennett being Bennett, you guys were always high on tech, even prior to starting up. So help me understand, what do you see in the new face of Indian education system will look like?
So hi everyone, my name is Gurnam. I represent Bennett University. We are based out of Greater Noida, part of Delhi NCR right now. So Abhishek, Ankur rightly put it across. One of the things that we see is also important as part of the new education policy. We believe that entrepreneurial mindset is also an integral part which is required, whether or not the students have their own startup or not, but having that mindset alone is very, very important. In addition to the technology, obviously, we offer technology related programs. We've been very focused on having an updated curriculum with the technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain, cybersecurity, robotics and automation. So those are the focus areas, and the idea is to be updated, because there's no point in teaching something which is outdated and the industry doesn't really require that. So it is important that they are getting relevant 21st century knowledge so that they can move ahead in their careers accordingly. I mean, typically depending on the careers that they choose to move into. So as a university, see, university is basically a training ground for the students. So we as university have to focus on giving them opportunities to learn, make the mistakes and learn from them, so that tomorrow when they move out either into the industry or to higher education, they learn from their mistakes and move ahead in their careers accordingly. I think that's the approach that we have to follow, and the new education policy is definitely in on those lines. But I think yeah, that's my opening remark.
So if the students are listening to us, students, I've been talking to you, I've been coming to your school very many years, and we have been talking about all the futuristic careers and how future careers can make sense for all of us. That makes me move to Pallavi. Palaksha is a new setup coming up, and it's a way different approach to engineering. What I hear from the news that's floating around. Help me understand in just quick 120 seconds, and it has to be 120 seconds, Pallavi. Okay, your opening remarks, your take on the new age education system, and how is Palaksha fitting in there?
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Abhishek. And I completely echo the remarks of the two panelists before me in terms of how the broader education system in India is changing, and a lot of institutions have taken the lead in actually driving that change. So it's very heartening to see how the entire ecosystem is transforming. And Palaksha in that context is a university which is really trying to reimagine technology, education and research. How it has come about is that it is a global group of philanthropists, entrepreneurs, business leaders, academia, more than 60 of them from all over the world, who have come together in a collective philanthropic effort to really create an institution that is truly world-class. And as a quick background on me, I've been a consultant at the Boston Consulting Group, and I jumped onto the project the moment I heard about it because I've never heard of something that transformative, and it was a little contribution to creating something that's truly world-class. In terms of how it is, reimagining, one part of it is what Gurnam referred to in terms of the kind of technologies that need to be taught today. So a lot of the education that was created 100 years ago was for an industrial age, it was for a factory age, and disciplines were set up in that manner. But now all of those things are really coming together to create interdisciplinary degrees, which people can actually use to make a difference in the world. So as on date, if a person wants to make a larger impact, the way they can use technologies like AI, robotics, cyber-physical systems to actually make a larger impact. And the related point to this is that to actually solve a big problem, one doesn't need just the technology side of it, but thinking about how it actually impacts society, how it impacts human beings, how do you connect the dots? So in that way, integrating technology with liberal arts, with design, with an entrepreneurial mindset, so people can actually put those things together in the context of how you make a difference to a real problem, be that tackling COVID, be that thinking about the water crisis or cybersecurity, future of mobility, and all these larger problems which engineering was originally meant to solve, creating the sort of education which actually enables people to do that and make a larger impact.
True that. Now, my biggest worry is whenever we sit on panel discussions, whenever we talk about future careers, we end up talking about a lot of technology. And my worry is, I'm a career counselor and a career coach, right? So, and I've been talking to these students year after year going to DPS International. My worry is that, are we trying to scare the kids who are not really tech geeks or who are not essentially into tech? So we'll leave that thought. We'll definitely take that thought during the course of our discussion. But what Pallavi said is very, very critical, because I was reading a quote by Steve Jobs recently, and it said that the DNA of Apple is not just technology, but it's the marriage of technology with liberal education, right? With liberal arts, so with humanity. So that's what Steve Jobs said, and that's what drives me to the question for Shaurya. Shaurya, if you're around, because I don't see you on my screen, if you're around, your opening remarks for the topic of the day today, and how is Ashoka placing itself for the future of education?
Thanks for the question, Abhishek, and thanks for my intro. And like the gentleman and the lady, they had already said, I have to agree with everything. Now, coming on to the future, I guess this year has been tough for everyone. It has been a year when everyone has had to really adapt with a lot of things. So that brings me to my point about how Ashoka had adapted to a few things post the COVID, because initially there was a confusion, lockdown, how are students going to be here, how are students going to be there. So in Ashoka, we had our mid-semester break starting in March 7th, and by March 16th our online classes have already begun. This was 10 days before the lockdown was announced. Now on the March of 19th is when the lockdown, when the Haryana government had actually ordered for universities to shut down, and on the 18th of March our VC had already sent out a message for students to return to their homes. Right, so this is something that everyone had to adapt with, especially students who were attending the university. And I think moving forward, we just have to keep in mind that when we're talking about, our philanthropic initiative at Ashoka, be it Kriya, be it any other university, when we're talking about interdisciplinary approaches, we already are in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution, right? And all the industrial revolutions in the past have brought us to the point where we have to adapt to the changes and we have to go forward with the times as well. There is nothing different with this as well. As the problems come up, we have to look for new solutions, whether it is education, whether it is health, and just move forward and adapt with it. So this will be my opening statement, and that adapting is the most important and the most prominent thing right now that we all have to do.
Right. Thank you. Meenu, if you're there, my question to you is, I have recently chaired a discussion with Kriya, which was attended by Kanchi as well as Vikram, right? And I asked them this question, and I would ask the question again to you. When Shaurya was talking about industrial revolution, what we need to understand is that when the last industrial revolution happened, it was more like when mechanical jobs shifted to the machines. So when mechanical jobs shifted to the machines, a new job was created, right? So there was no loss of jobs because there was a new job created for managing machines. But this knowledge revolution, which is the fourth industrial revolution we are talking about, a lot of cognitive jobs are going to get shifted too, right? Cognitive jobs which will involve psychology, cognitive jobs which will involve law, legal studies. And this all will also get shifted to technology. How is Kriya shaping up, looking at that kind of a future, Meenu? And what is your take? How is Kriya well placed, not so well placed? Over to you on the topic.
See, as far as Kriya is concerned, I don't know if I'm supposed to introduce Kriya also in one line. So we are in Sri City, and which is 70 kilometers away from Chennai Airport, north in Andhra Pradesh. And as far as Kriya is concerned, Kriya is basically a pioneer in interwoman learning, right? And when I say interwoman learning, its curriculum is very well curated, very thoughtfully, and it has been curated. The past has been weaved into the future, and the theory has been weaved into the practical experience. And of course, the science has been weaved into arts. Now, coming to your point, when you talked about the last, industrial evolution and the new industrial evolution, Industry 4.0, which is coming up, and you rightly said that people are talking about that a lot of automation is going to come. And so if I combine the automation with psychology, coming from psychology background, I feel that yes, cognitive sciences is going to rise. And I share my personal experience when I joined this industrial revolution in '98. I can say, when I joined an organization, '96, in fact, I was told to develop a software on career counseling, right? So I said, no, I'm a psychologist. I will not do the automation and this revolution. It is not meant for me. But I was forced, on the job. I learned how to switch on and switch off the computer. And then within a week's time, I was told to develop this program. So what I did, students, please listen to it. I was a psychologist trained in counseling skills. So I sat with the computer programmers, software programmers, and I sat in front of the screen and I said, if I act like a student, this is the thing which I want in a career counseling program. And I kept saying, and I kept jotting down the points, and it came out to be a flow chart. That flow chart was given to that software programmer, and within 10 days time, I had the career counseling software program in front of me in '96, right? So when we say automation, as Abhishek rightly said, many jobs are going to be lost, but don't worry, new jobs will be evolved. Psychology, the work which is done by the robots and the AI, they don't need you. They need you for what a human being can do. So what you can do, you need to be innovative. You need to be flexible enough to the changing environment. Okay, so machines should not start working. If machines work like human beings, then it's fine. But human beings should not start working like machines. Then it will be a chaos. And as far as Kriya is concerned, and when I talk about the interwoven learning, so Kriya aims at developing ethical, impactful, and purposeful leaders. And we give broad-based, one needs to have a broad-based education and along with skills. I strongly believe in that. It is not only the knowledge, it is not only the degree, but it is the skill which is going to take you through. Abhishek, I love that quote because I always say that quote in my sessions of Steve Jobs. He has clearly said, yes, that, it is a combination of two. You cannot develop any website, any program without human mind. So that is required. And, education is mind is more like a parachute. You can learn best when it is open. So you have to be open-minded. You have to be creative enough. You have to be flexible enough. You cannot enter a job and get retired. Those days are gone. So now you need to be flexible enough to not only change your jobs, but a shift in the career. And I'm the live example here. Started with personal counseling, career counseling, and now shifting to this outreach department. And there are many more things and corporate training. So you have to be flexible enough to integrate many disciplines together, to weave disciplines together. Only then you can be prepared for Industry 4.0.
Absolutely. I completely agree, Meenu, and that's so true. Before I jump onto the questions, which I have lined up for the 5 so-called, Indian international universities. And when I say them, they are like local universities. They are truly global and yet very Indian, very local. So, my take is, like Meenu said, that, a lot of interdisciplinary approach, and all of you mentioned, I generally, in a very funny manner, because when you talk to kids, and there are a lot of kids listening right now, kids, you need to understand this, all right? Even for humanities, there will be a lot of careers. So if you love psychology, there'll be amazing amount of careers available for you. So you do not have to worry. But you have to understand 2 things. When we as individuals, me, Ankur, Gurnam, Pallavi, everybody here on the panel, when we talk about technology, we don't want to scare you away. What we want to tell you is that you have to be technology relevant for the future. Because in future, there'll be only 2 kinds of jobs. Either you are a technology creator or you are a technology consumer. There'll be no other third job available. So you should at least understand how to consume technology. And for some of you, I am the live example. When people say that COVID was a big challenge, I tell them that, hey, High School Moms and International Alliance of Counselors and Educators is a baby born during COVID practically, right? And if we have come that far in 4 months, COVID as a challenge has emerged as an opportunity for a lot of other initiatives as well, including the initiative floated by me. And also, children, you need to understand that dheere dheere hum sab pagal ho rahe hain. So psychology will definitely be the field of the future. Now, going to the questions, like we started with Ankur, we'll start with Ankur again. Ankur, any unique strategies deployed at OP Jindal to tackle the challenges related to the pandemic? And do you have any idea how are you shaping up to open up for the next calendar?
Thank you, Abhishek. For us, yeah, we are starting from 1st of September, which is in the next couple of days. From 31st of September, our classes are starting online. So that is the thing that we have. Our first year classes are starting from September. The older years, the 2nd, 3rd, 4th year classes have already started in mid of August. So that way, the university has already commenced and we are on our way with the new semester. With regards to how we adapted, I think absolutely Jindal has adapted in every which ways that we could to ensure that our students have uninterrupted access to education. But right from mid of March, I think we hardly, as one of my colleagues were mentioning from Ashoka, similarly for Jindal, around 70 students that they have to go back to their homes, and their classes will be happening now from online. Their exams happened online. The results we were given online. So everything, the semester went on very smoothly. That's one aspect of our education. Other part was we had to adapt our admission process. So our admission process went online. Our exams went online. Our interview process went online. It's commendable that we recruited about 1,500 students for our first year program right throughout COVID pandemic. And you were talking about your own setup, which has done very well, and revolutionizing the way outreach is being done, which is commendable. But I think Jindal also had a similar experience. We also started doing a lot of webinars, interacting, WhatsApp counseling sessions, Skype counseling sessions, and definitely collaborating with partners to reach out to the audience that we look at. So, and we are looking at another 3 to 4 months. I don't think COVID is going to go away anytime soon. So we have to live with it. And yeah, we are all going a bit crazy. We all want to go out and go back to campus, have those physical classrooms, but we have to adapt. And as my panel was saying, everybody has to adapt, and we are also adapting. Institutions are adapting. We are, as professionals, adapting. We are today doing a virtual interaction. Probably in good times we would have been at DPS and talking to you in person with students in front of us.
And Ankur, I'm sure if you have seen DPS International's auditorium, I am telling you, Rima ma'am and the management there, they have done a phenomenal job. It's not an auditorium. It's an opera house in Gurgaon, right? It's a 2-tier hall. Last year, I hosted the high school moms event with them, and they were kind enough to host it. And we had like crazy experience there, 2-tier opera experience. And okay, so I understand that most of the universities who are represented here, you have done your own bit in adapting to the challenge. So we'll not repeat the question because of the paucity of time. We'll rather go to the next question. And here I'll give you a basic purview. You guys are right now talking to one of the finest schools in North India. Amazing set of students, amazing set of teachers, a great counselor in Nagma, and she has been able to pull off a great event in a very short span of time after a lot of work with her team. I keep on going to them as a career coach. I keep on talking to these kids every year. And every time I go to them and I tell them that, hey, why the hell are you not writing the SATs, right? If one SAT is able to get you into 36 universities in India, forget about going abroad, you should definitely write the SAT. Now, I do understand that most of you have your own entrance tests and have your own process to follow, but I also want to understand that all of you do accept SAT or you do not. So starting with Gurnam, what is your admission specifications, and what are these specific strategies that a candidate's application or a candidate should focus on? What is your ideal candidate fit, and do you accept the standardized test?
So yeah, I'll answer that. Yes, definitely, we are part of the global alliance by the College Board, so we do accept SATs, but those are for specific programs. So when we talk about the standardized testings or the process of admission, it varies from program to program, and in that sense, it is giving more flexibility to the students. So like just for BTech, it is class 12, JEE Mains or SAT. Similarly, for BBA, it will be class 12 or IB scores or SAT. And for liberal arts, there is an interview, right? For journalism, we have our own entrance test. So it's all about giving flexible options to the students, so they can pick and choose and then apply and accordingly go ahead with the admission process. So they can also apply through class 12 scores. So that's one of the criterias. I mean, we are fairly new in the system, so we've not really gone ahead with our own standardized testing. But we've taken SAT as a benchmark, and we've given the students,
which is fair, because if the child can write one exam multiple times in a year and can be accepted by most of you, why to make the child suffer and write multiple exams, right? Yeah. Which is very fair. Thank you.
Because a lot of the students don't really apply for JEE, but they do write the SAT. Absolutely. So we give that option to the students. Yeah.
Super. Pallavi, coming to you. What would be an ideal candidate fit for Palaksha? Will you be accepting the SATs? That's the second question. So over to you.
Okay. So an ideal candidate for Palaksha would be one who certainly has academic excellence. That is one of, but that is only one of the parameters. We also want people who are really creative, who are very innovative, who think differently, and people with a great attitude. So it is a brief summary, but the way that is reflected in the process is that there is an application form which is comprehensive. It includes video and written essays, as well as a creative portfolio, so people can actually submit things that they have built, created, anything, and we're not looking at some form of checklist here, but we really want to understand students and what makes them special, what makes them unique, and we'd love to go through all of that. As part of the standardized testing process, as Gurnam mentioned and as you, Abhishek, mentioned, the idea is not to add pressure by creating more tests, but we accept the standardized tests that students generally take, which include JEE Mains, as well as SAT, as well as ACT, and KVPY. So all of those tests are acceptable. And given that there are multiple rounds, depending on whenever there have been delays in some of these tests, so as and when people take a test and when they feel ready, they can apply at that time.
Super. Thank you, Pallavi.
It could be followed by an online interview. So that's the next stage. I did want to add one thing on the previous question, if you'd allow me, which I think is very relevant to the audience. So in terms of moving online and using technology, a lot of universities around the world, Ivy Leagues, top profs are also adapting to this change. But I do feel that all the students are actually, in this generation, they are digitally native. So, you have not seen the world in any other way, because of which learning in an online medium actually comes extremely naturally to this generation. And that is something that we have experienced while undergrad program is still a year away. We have other programs running. And it's been just an amazing experience to actually work with students in developing the next frontier. Even top universities like MIT, etc., they have been talking about this future for a long time, but COVID has just forced everybody into action. And I feel that this generation has a unique role to play in actually participating in creating the next frontier, rather than seeing this as a substitute to what was there. So to that extent, how we create flipped classrooms so people can actually see high quality content and then come into class for better discussion, better synthesis. It's not just a translation of physical to online. It's really completely rethinking education, and I'd love for students to actually be involved in that process. And at Plaksha, we're actually trying to do some mock classes and so on, where students come in and actually give inputs.
Wonderful. All right. So Shaurya, over to you. My question to you is, and I'll take reference from where Pallavi left. Okay. So a couple of very interesting things she said, that rethinking education. This new model of click, brick, click, which will be there. It'll not just be all brick going forward, because the technology curve has shifted, and it will definitely not be all click. So it'll be click, brick, click kind of a model. And definitely we also understand, when we say that students are far more technology savvy, I see that COVID is that beautiful time. Okay, I see that it's such a beautiful time where teachers are learning from the students. I personally see when my kid is in the school class, and the teacher gets stuck on a Zoom somewhere, right? My son will be able to actually help the teacher and say that, okay, hey, ma'am, this is what you do. So it's a wonderful feeling, because when the teacher becomes the student and the student becomes the teacher, what better can we ask for? My question to you is, again, in terms of, like Plaksha is saying, that the score is not the student. Student is much more than the score, right? We are talking about the passions, the cause that comes to your heart. What is that thing that drives you, clicks you, motivates you? What is Ashoka looking at in terms of the admissions process? And I do understand that, and most of us know that you do also accept the SATs, but you also have that writing assessment test. So if you can just throw some light on that writing assessment test, so that it's easy for the candidates to understand.
Awesome. All right. Without taking any extra time. So basically, when it comes to the profile, obviously we have a very holistic admission process. When we put a cutoff on that holistic admission process, it's no longer holistic. So we cannot have a cutoff, right? Obviously, we accept students to be average. They should be able to cope up with the curriculum at Ashoka. So that is something we can assess from the application. Apart from your merit now, your essay, we have 3 essay questions in our application. I feel that is the most important aspect of our application, because that gives us the window into your life right now. All right, so that is where you have to really dig deep into the application, because everything other than that is your certificates, is your scores. It's very physical, right? This, on the other hand, the 3 personal essay questions that you have, they'll show us who you really are. And trust me when I say the admission teams put so much of emphasis on these 3 specific questions. So definitely that. And apart from the merit, obviously, you know, any social engagement that you have done, if you are into sports, if you're into ECA, flaunt it, you know, display your talent, make Google Slides, share that link on that application, because we are looking at everything. If you have any videos, if you have any recordings, if you're a musician, if you're a football player, show us everything, because that's how you will make a strong application. You have to stand out. You have to understand this. In an application, 5,000 students are applying. You have to stand out. You know, that comes from within you. Engage well with the application, you will stand out. So have enough of faith in yourself, have enough faith in your abilities, and I'm sure you'll do well. Coming on to the standardized testing, obviously we accept the SATs and the AACT scores. They are not mandatory, but they are recommended. We also have a Ashoka aptitude test. This test is based on the Cambridge TSA, Cambridge Thinking Skills Assessment. Consists of 20 critical thinking, 20 problem solving questions. Very basic test. So, you know, we generally suggest from the outstream, when I'm talking to any student, I'd say that the maximum, the more you give us, better it will be for your application, because we select the best score. Between your predicted, your SAT, ACTs, and the AAT, we select the best score. So obviously, if you give us all 3, you have a good chance. But if not, then at least give something between the SAT and the AAT, because there is no charge for the Ashoka aptitude test. But obviously, because, you know, we are asking for very limited things, it's best if you engage best and give us maximum information. So
Super.
that's what I'm.
Thank you, Shaurya. Meenu, before I ask you the question, let me take the stem from what Shaurya said. Okay, so here is the deal, kids, and I'm going to tell you a cheat code without even asking what are they looking at in the application. There are 2 things that you really need to remember before you apply to these best of the universities. One is introspect and retrospect for a better prospect, right? Think about yourself, fall in love with yourself, figure out what your passions are, and I'm sure you'll be able to write an amazing application. And second thing is, they will definitely ask you either in the interview or in the essay, what the hell did you do during COVID? All right. I am telling you, I can see it on their faces. So this is the cheat code that I'm giving you guys as a career coach, not as the moderator. So be ready with these 2 answers, because this is what they are definitely asking for at least a couple of years now, because COVID possibly has happened once in history, and God willingly, it will not happen again. Meenu, over to you. What is the application process at Kriya like? 120 seconds, quick and short. You are on mute, Meenu.
Okay, sorry. So it happens in 2 stages. So Kriya looks at the holistic application. So the student starts with the online application, which has a personal story, along with the academic transcripts from grade 9, 10, 11, and 12th predicted scores we need. And also your certificates which support your co-curricular and extracurricular activities. So here I would like to mention one point, that every application is reviewed by 4 to 5 professors or admission officers to have the element of objectivity, and every application is assessed in a context. So if you have any context and you want us to consider that, please mention in your personal story. If you are selected in stage 1, then the student moves to the second stage, which we call it as Kriya Immersive Case. So this happens in a group. So during lockdown, of course, we are having online KIC. We call it as Kriya Immersive Case. Otherwise, it is in person in a group of 10 to 15 students. So you are given a case either in the form of a video or a text, and the student is expected to analyze the case, apply your critical thinking, and look at the case from different perspectives. You know, like even if, like you were talking about the pandemic, you know, pandemic can be viewed from different perspectives, from a medical professional, from an educator point of view, from a sociologist point of view. So like this, and then you are asked to do an individual activity, that is, you write your reflective essay on that, and then you do a group activity. And also there is an informal conversation with the admission officer or the professor. I say informal conversation because we want to know more about you. You know, what are you passionate about? So it is not a kind of interview, but it is an attempt to give you the opportunity to talk about yourself. And there is a small quantitative test, which is 30 minutes. It is basically a reasoning test. So if you pass through this KIC, and then you are given the offer letter to join us at Kriya.
Super. One question, Meenu. If students apply, let's say through an SAT, do you give them a confirmed offer, or do you still give them a conditional offer?
So Abhishek, as I said, we look at the holistic application. So SAT and ACT scores we do accept because that gives an idea about your academic potential. But based on SAT, we do not give conditional or non-conditional offer. It is a part of your application. So it is not only SAT which decides your confirmed offer. It is the overall application.
Wonderful. All right, coming to Ankur. Ankur, world is changing. So is the scenarios around. Any new age courses that OP Jindal has launched this year or is planning to launch in next couple of years for the kids who are yet to step into grade 11 or DP1 as they would call it at DPSI? Any new age courses that you are looking at as a university?
Yeah, Abhishek. So this year only, I think we launched a very relevant course for all of us, which speaks to large volume of students. Is our School of Environment and Sustainability. I think we are one of the few schools in India to offer a 3-year undergraduate program in environment and sustainability, which is talking about something which is relevant for all of us today: climate change. And we are seeing COVID and the pandemics, and the scientist community has been talking about how it is also, one of the reasons can be, the rampant destruction of nature around us and man taking more than what it's due to us. So environment and sustainability is the course that we have launched this year, and we have got good response for that. We are launching the classes for the same from 1st of September. Next year, we are also launching, although we have a liberal arts school in which we do a major in psychology, but we are launching our 10th school in the OP Jindal Global University School of Psychology. So we will be offering BA in psychology from 2021 admissions, which is a standalone school specializing in only psychology studies. So those are the 2 programs that we are launching.
All right, Pallavi, couple of programs. Your all programs are new, right? So they better be all new age, because that's what I expect from Palaksha. So, but couple of programs that you would definitely want to tell the students to consider or think about.
Yeah, so there are 4 degrees that we're starting with, and as you said, as a greenfield institution, we have the opportunity for all of them to be new age. So the first one is called Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence, which builds upon a traditional CS degree and adds AI and human intelligence to it. The second one is called Robotics and Cyber Physical Systems. There isn't a degree of this kind in any part of the world, and it is recommended by advisory board as the way forward. It builds on what would typically have been electrical, mechanical, and CS disciplines, and it puts those things together and mixes them with Internet of Things, sensors, and so on to create something that's really at the interface of digital and physical. The third one is called Biological Systems Engineering, which is not just about the health or the human health side of it. It's about how it impacts human health and planetary health. So it's a very wide program. And the fourth one is called Data Science, Business, and Economics. So the use of data science, everyone here is familiar with that, but how that actually applies to business, how that is used to make a difference, it lies at that intersection. And in India, often education institutions, there were top business schools and top computer science schools, and even in the best universities in the world, these are separate departments, but it's actually putting them together right in the form of a degree, which is not just saying some courses of this and some courses of that, but creating it in a truly integrated fashion. So I think all 4 of these are very, very contemporary, and they were not created in a hurry. It was 9 months of discussion with an advisory board, which comprises 15 people from various top institutions of the US, Berkeley, MIT, Purdue, Stanford, many included, who at dean and higher levels. And they feel that this is really the future. These sort of degrees cannot even be started by great institutions except at the periphery, because at the core, it's hard to really change what has always existed. But so we're really excited to launch these. And I think it really reflects the larger value of interdisciplinarity. One thing I also want to mention is that these 4 degrees are not standalone. So while they're interdisciplinary in themselves, but the 4 of them are also complementary with each other. So when students come in, then a lot of what they go through in the initial period is common, and then it builds on top of it as people choose what they're interested in. But many elements of these are actually synergistic. As if I just take a simple example, for instance, we know people in our family who would have, say, Parkinson's disease. Now that, because of which, one's hand would be shaking, right? So if one wants to actually counter that, there are some impulses that result in the hand shaking. Now, if one creates a device which can actually be plugged in, a small thing which counters those impulses and creates, it sort of counters the same effect, then a person can actually say, right, they can pick up a cup of tea. Those things can be created. Now, if I'd ask a student that, what do you need to know to be able to build something like that? Is it biology? Of course it is. Is it electrical engineering? It is. Is it computer science? Yes. Is it mechanical? Yes, it's all of that. So this is how all these things really come together. And I think that's what is truly exciting, at how do you use all of this and actually build things which can solve problems.
Thank you, Pallavi. I'm sorry, I'll have to, not allow you to speak more because we started 7 minutes late. So now I have only 7 minutes and I still have a couple of more questions to ask. But before I go there, Gurnam, future will look at 3 kinds of interaction: human to human, human to machine, machine to machine.
Yeah.
Right. Few courses which Bennett has come up with, which are very futuristic in nature.
Yeah, so definitely, I mean, we've reviewed our computer science curriculum, and that's where the specialization specific curriculums have come in. So artificial intelligence, data sciences, blockchain, robotics and automation, gaming and virtual reality. I mean, in India specifically, it is not considered as a big industry, but if you look at it, across the world, it is a huge industry. So slowly, that particular area is also coming up. So that's one. The other thing is we've also introduced a BCA program wherein a couple of these specializations have also been included, given that a lot of students who might not be looking at a BTech CSE specifically, but want to still pursue the computer specialization. And this year we've also introduced the liberal arts concept. So which basically has the humanities courses like psychology, the majors in psychology, pol science and economics as well, and then there is the business related majors and the media related majors. So these are the 3 programs, specifically which have been introduced or being changed. So over a period of time, we are looking at adding a few other courses, maybe by next year or a year later.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Meenu, over to you. Because I work very closely with Kachi in one of my counselor committees. Help me understand. I understand that there are over 100 possible options of majors and minors. I get that. But any futuristic courses being started by CREA this year or a couple of years down the line?
So we do have, different kinds of majors, including environmental studies or biological sciences. I can say that new age careers, in a way that we give joint majors and integrated majors, and to such an extent that, the student is also given an opportunity to curate their own majors. So depending on the availability of the professors and the demands of the students, we are open to the idea of curating their own majors, which can be a combination of different subjects. Like suppose if I combine computer science and psychology, which can lead to masters in cognitive sciences later. So it all depends what kind of combinations they want to take up.
This is so beautiful. Shaurya, if you can just come in, because I don't see you on my screen. This is so beautiful that Indian education system has come of age. Now we are talking about that maybe one pill might not solve all the diseases. So let's give the child an opportunity to study what the child wants to study. What's your take, Shaurya, at Ashoka?
Yeah, so at Ashoka, Abhishek, we have been extremely busy this year, let me tell you that. So, when it comes to anything beyond our undergrad and everything, we have started this thing called Ashoka X this year. All right, it's these curated courses, basically over 150 courses you can choose from, and they are somewhere between 3 to 5 weeks. All right, and they happen all over the world. So someone from the States will be teaching in India, someone from a different country, and these courses are really good. So something like, Indian justice, contemporary India, measuring the universe. So we have these courses that were started this year, and we've gotten an excellent response. Along with that, we have these every week. We have behind the classroom and scientifically speaking seminars where faculty members basically address, different topics in an interactive manner with the school students. So they have an option. Students who want to come to Ashoka, who are studying in schools right now, they can join these seminars, engage with the faculty members, get to know about different topics. If someone is into computer science, we had a computer science workshop today, and I believe a lot of students from DPSI also are there attending it right now as we speak, because I had sent that invite to Ms. Khan and she forwarded. So we are doing plenty of things, keeping busy, because to be honest, this is the way forward right now. This is what we know. Things that are happening online, you have to make the most of it, because like you said, it's going to be asked to the students, what have you done during the lockdown? So keep yourselves busy with these things, because you have to make the most of your time right now.
Right now, so kids, this is very, very important, and you have to understand that most of the universities are very futuristic in nature. They understand what is the requirement for the future, and they are all set, all ready to welcome you and prepare you for the future. Having understood that, and like Shaurya said, Shaurya, I'm a big fan of DPS International. They provide an amazing international experience to their kids. Big fan of the management led by Reema ma'am. Let me ask this question, starting with Ankur again. Ankur, what is this role of? Because when I talk to kids as a career coach, I keep on telling them that even if you study in India, you should definitely look at some kind of an international exposure, because today's time is not about just being local. It is not about just being global. It is about being local, right? So what is your take on the role of international collaborations when it comes to undergrad Indian education landscape, and what kind of international collaborations do you have? And this is the same question that will go to each one of them. So I'll just quickly keep on taking the names, and you tell me about your international collaborations and what is your role around it. And meanwhile, if I can just request all others to put their mic on mute, because there's some echo going on in the background. Thank you. Ankur.
Thank you, Abhishek. So yeah, I think international collaborations for us at Jindal are very, very important as part of our education. We have collaborations with about 250 plus universities in about 52 countries, and those include summer exchange programs, semester exchange programs, dual degree programs. So we have dual degree programs with about 30 universities, right from Cornell to UCLA, and there are a lot of those Ivy League institutions that provide mobility options for Jindal students across our law school, liberal arts school. We encourage our students definitely to go abroad for at least one semester, or if not one semester, to summer programs. And we do have a lot of summer programs. Every semester before COVID hit us, we used to send about 150 students abroad, and that number is always increasing annually. But apart from those fantastic collaborations that the Jindal has, I think another aspect that students can learn from is our full-time faculty, which is teaching full-time in Jindal right here in India. And they are again from fabulous institutions, right from Columbia to Harvard and all those fantastic institutions that are aspirational for students from around the world. So I think going back to your initial remarks, or your new age, coming of age of universities in India, definitely I think the kind of opportunities for not only going abroad, the kind of flexibility, the kind of credit transfers, that the facility that is available to students, is also the kind of faculty, world-class faculty that is available to students right here in India, and that plays a very important role for our education at OP Jindal, and I'm sure for my other colleagues from other university in India. So that's my remarks.
Thank you, Ankur. All right, guys, only 60 seconds. All right. So, I mean, I know most of you are very used to talking at length, but only 60 seconds. Pallavi, over to you. Your remarks.
So I'll echo everything that Ankur said without repeating it. Faculty coming to India and teaching here, students getting opportunities to go abroad, both for exchange, spending a semester, as well as doing research projects abroad, and then the curriculum development part. So universities around the world are very closely involved in actually designing everything that we are doing. So I think these are the broad dimensions of international partnership. And we have deep partnerships with UC Berkeley, Purdue, and SRI International, which was earlier Stanford Research Institute. So these are all very deep partnerships where they're involved across all of these aspects. And visiting faculty comes from about 15, 20 different institutions.
Wow. It doesn't get better. I'm a UCLA alum, and being an Anderson pass out, Anderson School of Management pass out, when Ankur says UCLA and you say UC Berkeley, and you talk about University of California system, I am the happiest. All right, Gurnam, over to you. What kind of international collaborations Bennett has, and what role do you see in these collaborations play in your overall output?
Yeah, so we have a tie-up with Babson that's particularly for the entrepreneurship related courses. The students can pursue a certificate program there. Apart from that, we have a tie-up with Cornell Law School, Cornell University Law School. Then the tie-ups for the engineering school, which is Florida International University, Georgia Tech, and University of Nebraska, Omaha. So these are particularly research-driven, where students can pursue immersion programs or research projects, particularly if they are pursuing a BTech program. So typically, as of now, yeah, so these are the ones that we have. But obviously, over a period of time, we are looking at more collaborations from European universities as well as the US universities.
Shaurya, this is one thing about collaborating on the content and the research front. There is another thing which is called collaboration internationally on the internships front. Because as a career coach, I'm a big fan of internships, right? What kind of practical exposure are you giving to the kids who are coming to the campus? So do you have any kind of collaborations on that front, or as well as the research front? Go ahead.
All right. So we do have internship as compulsory after the third semester at Ashoka, right? So students are encouraged to do an internship, and our Office of Placement and Office of Learning and Development, they help the students to seek out suitable internships for themselves. At the same time, I can tell you personally that I know students from Ashoka who have done 2 to 3 internships in 3 months, right? So it does not stop at one internship, because you are gaining experience over there. At the same time, I'll just like to take the 30 seconds, Abhishek, to talk about the international collaboration of Ashoka as well. Obviously, we have the semester summer abroad program. You know, we have faculty training. Our faculty is being trained by these universities. Our curriculum has been set up by a lot of foreign universities as well. But from a personal experience, I'd like to say this, you know, I am a student from Delhi University, and we never had any international collaborations. But I did my master's in Australia. I just got back to India late last year. And I tell you, you know, from a point of just getting exposed, meeting new people, having to go to a new place, traveling, oh my God, the learning is endless. So for me, an international collaboration goes till that point where it's not in your classroom, it's beyond your classroom, you know. The kind of exposure that you can get by meeting people and having a word with a random stranger, it is incredible how much further you can go with that exposure. So international collaborations in that aspect, especially for us Indian students, is so important to look at a world which is much more beyond what we see over here.
Oh, I can see Nagma on the screen, and before I wrap it up and leave it to Nagma, because she's there only as a warning that guys, you have overshot your timing. Okay, so you have to get going.
So well, Abhishek.
Yeah, Meenu. Your comments on your international collaborations at CREA, and any internship collaborations that you have.
Yeah, we have internship collaboration with Academy Internship Council, which provides internship worldwide. And we have very well curated partnerships with various universities, maybe University of Stanford or Cambridge. So, for example, like University of Chicago, the Harris Public Policy School, we have a collaboration for data and policy. Like last summer also, one of the girls, she wanted to do a course in data and policy. So she did a summer course there. And suppose if a child wants to do psychology, then, you know, Nottingham Trent University, biodiversity with James Cook University in Australia. So with different universities, we have a little specific and well thought and well curated partnerships.
Wow. All right. So for all the attendees out there, this was a phenomenal discussion. And if before I hand it over to Nagma, if Nagma allows, because I leave that bit to Nagma, if Nagma allows, everybody will be allowed to speak their last parting comments. But thank you so very much, Ankur Vora from OP Jindal, Gurnam from Bennett, Pallavi from Palaksha, Shaurya from Ashoka, and Meenu from CREA. This was really fabulous, super awesome. And thank you, Nagma, for inviting all of us. This was a super event pulled off by you and your team. And my congratulations to you and Rima ma'am and the entire DPS International fraternity. Nagma, over to you.
Before I start thanking everyone, Abhishek would ask me for
Okay, guys, if you can just shut up your mic for the time being, yeah, so that Nagma can speak.
Your parting line for us, quickly.
Thank you, Nagma, and thank you, Abhishek, for this wonderful session. I truly enjoyed it and it was very informative. So my sincere gratitude to management, staff, and students at TPS International. Thank you so much.
Pallavi.
Thank you so much, everyone, for allowing us to be a part of this session. We really, really enjoyed it and look forward to more of these. Thanks to all the students who were attending as well.
Gurnam, over to you.
So first of all, thank you to DPS International, and a lot of hard work has been done. I have been witness to that. So congratulations to Nagma ma'am, Preeti ma'am, and the entire team for pulling this off. So all of us are learning technology. So again, thumbs up. Thank you so much for having me here, and thank you Abhishek for being a great moderator. Loved it. Looking forward to an interaction like this again soon. Thank you.
Shaurya?
Same. Thank you so much, Ms. Khan. Thank you so much, Abhishek. It was such a great pleasure to be over here, and it's not easy to pull off these sessions. So, a big kudos to Ms. Khan and the entire team. Great job. Everything went really smooth. Big round of applause to all the teachers and management behind this. Excellent effort. Well done.
Last but not the least, very pretty looking Meenu.
I can, I'm at loss of words because everybody has said everything. So copied everything, whatever everyone has said. Thank you, Nagma. Thank you, Abhishek. And thank you, all the colleagues. And thank you, students and parents. I hope to see some of you on Kriya campus next year. All the best.
Wow.
Thank you so much. So thank you, Ankur. Thank you, Pallavi, Gurnam, Ms. Meenu, Shaurya. You all have been great. This was our first time, certainly our first, but not the last. We did take the plunge. We did the virtual fair. Thank you for being a part of our first virtual fair. And a big thank you to Abhishek, who is a very dear friend. And thank you for being there, Abhishek, supporting us through this. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.